Mrs. Brown's Boys. I was watching the clip this morning, and it's hilarious because I mean, there's a joke he makes in there where he goes, "Oh, well, if you just tune in, welcome to the Eddie McKenzie show," because you stand up in the middle of the audience and you're already like making them, you know, like cheer when they need to cheer and things like that. Like you're owning it.
It was an incredible experience. And again, it's an example of just going with the moment, because basically I'd seen a thing online and they were looking for extras for a sketch. And I was like, oh, okay, I was like, I don't know, Mrs. Brown, oh my God. And my partner at the time, she was like, no, go for it, you'll get on TV, what's the worst that can happen? I was like, oh, great, cool. So I applied for it, and then I got a phone call a few weeks later, and I was, oh, hello. And it was like, someone from the production staff, they were talking about the thing. They had cast all the extras, but they were interested in having me on anyway, in the show, because like at the start of the show, the format was, it's like a talk show version of Mrs. Brown.
Right.
I don't want to assume any of you have seen it, because
well, you never know.
You never know. I mean,
Mrs. Brown Boys is popular. There's a reason it's
it is popular. It's very popular. Bless them, and it did me no harm. So I'm thankful for Mrs. Brown. But basically, the concept is at the start, lovely Mrs. Brown talks to some of the audience, and there'll be a mixture of.
They're kind of doing their own warm-up that way, because it's like you get the audience on board, and then, right, let's watch the episode.
This is the idea. So it was usually a mix. She'll talk to like 3 people, and they'll be like, somebody who's done something good for charity, somebody who's doing something exciting,
and someone who's done
a complete grifter who just wants to be on telly. And so I was the one they found, and we were talking about it, and they were like, so we see on your CV you're an actor, you've done a bunch of stuff, musician, you know. And originally they were going to have me do like a Shakespeare monologue, because they were like, oh, you've done acting, you've done all that. And then he phoned me up a few days later and was like, no, scrap the Shakespeare, the production staff don't like it, would you play harmonica for us? And I had listed on my CV, I play harmonica, and I do play harmonica. I hadn't played harmonica for maybe a year at that point, and I went, oh, of course, yes. And so I
that old chestnut, very
quickly, it was very Joey Tribbiani being like, I'm a fully trained dancer, just put it on a CV. And I very quickly relearned harmonica, and so I went on, and they were like, originally, I was only going to be in the introduction, so they were like, you can play some songs, and the concept was do 2 songs and just keep it going. Just don't let her stop. And she'll tell you to stop, just keep going. We want you to drive Mrs. Brown mad. And yeah, I was a nonsense boy, and I was loving it, and I was riling up the crowd, and she was like, stop it, don't encourage him. And I'm like, whee! And it got a little out of hand. And then I ended up appearing again later on, because there was a bit where she gave out some like trifles that the chef had done. Yeah. And she was like, oh, I'll give it to some of the audience, and I'm going to give it to the harmonica boy, because maybe it'll shut him up. I was like, wee!
And you're like, I'm on telly.
Yes.
Got free food.
So telly twice at that point. And then they come up to me at the break and they go, we've had an idea. We'd love to have you in the end scene where they basically all go to like the pub set.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, what a lovely show it's been. And then they normally have like a musical act come on. So they had, it was Clean Bandit. Clean Bandit were playing. So Clean Bandit played. And then Mrs. Brown's, was that at the end? Basically, there was a point where she comes in and she's talking about the show and goes, oh, at least it's all peace and quiet now. And then I jump up and start playing 500 Miles on the harmonica, and the whole crowd's like, and she's like, oh, for God's sake. And so it ended up being you might be on telly playing harmonica talking to Mrs. Brown's, to being throughout the show
you were a recurring character
and causing absolute chaos. And it has that beautiful soundbite you said where it's, welcome to the Eddie McKenzie show, and you couldn't pay for that kind of like content.
No. I mean, that you can use that
beautiful soundbite. And so what happened was basically I did that, people loved it. Like people still talk to me about that like this. I had a friend's wedding years later, and I was the best man, and I'd just done a beautiful speech, not to blow my own trumpet. It was amazing, and it was a wonderful. It was a wonderful ceremony, beautiful day, and all anyone wanted to talk to me about was Mrs. Brown's Boys. Like his father-in-law comes up and goes, "Hey, I've seen you on the telly. Are you still doing that?" I'm like, "Oh my god." You know, and I'm like, he just got married. Can we please? And they were like, the Brown's Boys too.
The brides get upstaged by you and Mrs. Brown's Boys,
and it was like, oh,
the priest is like, before we start the ceremony, I just want to ask a question, Eddie.
I was a big fan. What was Mrs. Brown like? So that was all very exciting.